This is the High-Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. I'm Eric Balkman from the High-Stakes Fantasy Football Hour and the FFPC. You can follow me on Twitter at Eric Balkman and the FFPC on Twitter at FFPC. Before we get into the show, I want to remind everyone that you can get a listeners-only 10% discount to RotoViz by using the code RVRadio2022. That's RVRADIO2022. Your subscription gives you unlimited access to all of the RotoViz content and tools, and it supports the podcast channel. Now, without further ado, here's the latest edition of the RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown. Welcome in, everybody. It is the latest edition of the High Stakes Lowdown, a special pre-Week 10 edition. We are in the double digits for weeks already. Plenty of 9-0 teams are happy. Plenty of 8-1, 7-2 teams are in the thick of it. And if you're, 5-4, 4-5, 3-6, hey, you still got a shot. And the 2-7, 1-8 teams, don't anger the fantasy gods. Keep competing. Keep going hard, whether you're playing in the FFPC, the Footballguys Players Championship, or what have you. Once again, welcome into the RotoViz High Stakes Lowdown. I'm Eric Balkman from the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour, the Better Sports Networks, the High Stakes Fantasy Football Show, and, of course, the FFPC. Before we get into the show tonight, I want to remind everybody, RV Radio 2022 is your ticket to a 10% discount at RotoViz. And if you're looking for some action this week, in the FFPC, don't forget, we're not just season long at the FFPC. You can play in the weekly challenge every week. There's no draft, no salary cap in it. You can choose 10 or 12 players by Sunday's kickoff and watch them ride through the weekend's games. If you want to play in the 10-player format, you can do so without kickers and defenses. You can play in the 12-team format with kickers and defenses. Remember, you can only pick one player per NFL team, just like the FFPC world-famous playoff challenge, and we can do this on a weekly basis and have been, and awarding a lot of great prizes. You can win up to $2,500 or a 2023 FFPC main event if you want to play in the 10-team winner-take-all $200 entry game, where if you can beat the other 9 players, you will have a free entry into the 2023 FFPC main event. That is a contest that will give you a free entry, beg your pardon, for $200, you can win a free entry in the 2023 FFPC main event, and you can play for $1 million next year. Pretty good. You could either fork over the better part of $2,000 next year to play in it, or you could win your way in with just a $200 entry fee. If you want to play for $200, that's cool. We have $35 entry fees as well, 30-team contests and 100-team contests, again, with classic or slim formats. That's all at myffpc.com. Do want to welcome in my guest here. He should be in shortly, ladies and gentlemen, as we are ready to welcome in a guy who has won a ton of national contests, and a guy that I believe has been on this show at least twice before, a guy who has been on the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour before, and a guy who has won, seemingly, I don't even know how much. I mean, it's well over 6 figures in grand prizes over the years, and a guy who is in third place in the Footballguys Players Championship heading into Week 10. I'm going to welcome him in right now. You know him, you love him. He is one of the OGs of this show and one of my favorite people to talk to in the fantasy football industry. Please welcome in Mr. Stephen Ranaghan. Steve, what's going on, man? What's good?
How you doing, buddy? Great to talk to you. Thanks for inviting me.
It's always a pleasure bringing you on. And once again, we got the obligatory when I was promoting you on Twitter that you were going to make the appearance. Everybody just assumes you're Gordon Ramsay, man.
Yeah, I've heard that a lot, like probably 100 or 200 times. So yeah.
Every time, and sometimes it's the same people that know you're. Well, I've never seen you and Gordon Ramsay in the same room, so clearly you guys could be the same person. I don't know.
That's right. That's right.
I'm willing to wager that you are a little bit more talented in the fantasy football world than Gordon Ramsay is, and you've demonstrated over the years. Won a ton of stuff in NFFC and RT, and you're still chasing the FFPC main event, but the Footballguys Players Championship, you finished up there before as well, and now you're in third place heading into to Week 10. I want to concentrate this first question on. I think a big part of the reason that you're in third place right now has been your drafting of a pair of rookies that have been awesome this year. Chris Olave in New Orleans, Ken Walker up in Seattle. What did you see in those guys? In the pre-draft process, and then obviously when you're on the clock and looking to pick up players like that. What did you see in Olave and Walker this year?
Yeah, what's funny is I talked to some other folks about college football, and I honestly, I mean, I watched college football. I've probably watched more in the past couple of years than over the past 10 years or so. But anytime I was watching Ohio State, I used to, he just always caught my eye just as far as talent goes, and just the separation and the speed and all that, and just kind of looking at how he was coming into New Orleans. I kind of like that situation, and with Jameis Winston being able to throw the deep ball. So yeah, it was just lots of things that looked good for his situation. So I was kind of leaning that way.
Before I want to get your analysis on Ken Walker, but sticking with Olave, knowing that you like this player quite a bit, before he was even drafted, watching him at Ohio State, knowing that when he did get drafted into New Orleans, were you kind of looking at the other receivers there and saying, Michael Thomas hasn't played in like 2 years, Jarvis Landry might be past his prime, this is Olave's team? Did you kind of look at it from that point and kind of disregard those other two receivers there?
Yeah, I'll do that sometimes. Like if there's, just like you said, by process of elimination, if I look and see players I don't like on that roster that are, high value players too, right? Highly drafted. That'll sort of, lead me more towards that way as well. So, but yeah, just all the information coming out about him, in camp and stuff, like it was just, unbelievable. Just, all the different players, talking about his skill set and everything. And just watching him, he looks like the real deal for sure.
And Ken Walker, were you just trying to grab a piece of that Seattle running game? I mean, did you end up with like any Penny or DJ Dallas or Chris Carson, depending upon how early you were drafting? How did you attack the Seattle running back situation? Was it simply Walker and no one else?
Yeah, I've always been a Carson guy, so unfortunately, that it wasn't like I went crazy, doing that, over the summer. But yeah, no, definitely like the system and such, and I think he. He's shown a lot, in college, and just a lot of that burst, right? That sort of home run ability, and, all the missed tackles and, things like that. So, yeah, just, also just, kind of some of their, some of the kind of stuff coming out about them with not being able to throw the ball. So I, kind of like that as well. But he clearly looked dynamic. So definitely, liked him. He was injured there for a while, so it sort of got me off of that for a while, unfortunately. So I think sometimes I probably look too much into the news and sort of let it kind of get you a little bit. But it's kind of, worked out okay in the end, I think.
Let's talk about Kyren Williams here, because not only is he on your third place team in the Footballguys Players Championship, I know you have him on a lot of your teams so far this year. And I think it was a prudent investment, given that we didn't know what was going on with that Rams backfield, right? You were looking at Darrell Henderson. Like, this is when Cam Akers was not practicing with the team. You're looking at Darrell Henderson. You're looking at Malcolm Brown and Kyren Williams and Ronnie Rivers, who made an appearance as well. Now that Akers is back, what are you doing with Williams on your high stakes teams? Is he a guy that you're willing to cut at this point, given that his upside is a little bit capped if the Rams want to give a lot of touches to a lot of different players in that backfield?
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, I think Akers was kind of probably a little too overhyped coming out. Just the team just seems like such a mess right now, so I just don't really know. It seems like, they're going to be in a situation where they'll probably, kind of end up in a timeshare, but, over the long run, it's, seems like something you would hold at least for a little while. Right. I like the talent. I don't think it's like off the chart. He kind of reminds me of Connor a little bit, like his size and the profile and all that. Yeah, just, something I thought, would be a good place to go, at the time, I guess you could say.
And you're not willing to cut bait on him right now, right?
I don't think so. Just with, Rivers looks pretty bad right now. And then, Akers, I just think, coming off that injury, and, Henderson looks pretty good, but just, kind of not, feature back, right? So there's kind of a lot of things going on there. But it just kind of makes me worry a little bit about kind of their game scripts and things like that. So, but yeah, just kind of who knows could come out of that backfield, right? Like a lot of times these, it looks a certain way and then just goes completely the other way for 3 or 4 weeks. So,
and if those 3 or 4 weeks are in the championship round and you have Kyron Williams, it could be very profitable for you. Trade deadline was last week. The Lions shipped TJ Hawkinson to Minnesota. James Mitchell looks like he's the backup in Detroit. Robbie Anderson, even before the trade deadline, he gets shipped out to Arizona. Looks like Terrace Marshall is the guy to step up there, 3 for 53 and his first NFL touchdown this past week. You have both these guys, I think, on your third place team. I know you got them on a bunch of teams this year. Yeah. What do you expect from these guys going forward? Again, James Mitchell, tight end premium format like the FFPC. And then, of course, Terrace Marshall, a guy who a lot of people were excited about his rookie year, didn't really come to fruition. And now maybe looks like there's something to him in Carolina.
Yeah, I think with Marshall, it's like he's always had the talent, like, between the metrics and, the profile, just has always had it. I wonder if he got, kind of in the doghouse with one of those coaches, or, whether it was like the receivers coach or the offensive coordinator or, a lot of times with guys like that, you don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but there's clearly something there, right? If he was, on another team, he could be, going crazy, right? So just, that team's a little rough, but it seems like if they're out of games late in the year, you just never know kind of, how that could work out. But it seems like, Mayfield has a good connection with him and such. So, I kind of liked him. I kind of thought at draft time, he probably should have been drafted a little more, but just that situation, I think, kind of warrants that not happening in some instances. So.
What about Mitchell in Detroit? I mean, how high are you on him? What he could be? And again, I think statistically speaking, at least going into the Packers game this past week, you're looking at a top 5 offense in the NFL as far as points are scored. So Mitchell should be meaningful. What do you like about him?
Yeah, I was thinking, kind of about that, just like a few weeks ago, where there's so many athletic tight ends now, right? There's so many of them that have been drafted over the past few years. It's honestly hard to keep track of them a little bit. He looks a little bit more like a wide receiver, but just, with Hawkinson leaving and, I think they'll want to throw the ball. I'm not really a huge Jamal Williams fan either. And with Swift hurt, right? So it's just a matter of, kind of looking at, kind of how that could, maybe unfold. I know they have another tight end there that they're high on also. So
Brock Wright. Yeah.
Yep. So you just don't know kind of, that could end up in a timeshare or things like that. So, but yeah, as you said, I love the Lions coming into the season. I wish I had trusted myself a little more on that. I have some, but I just really didn't trust it. I was, not happy about that, but yeah, they look great.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Jamal Williams has been paying off for a lot of people who got him in the mid rounds. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown been paying off big time as well. Will James Mitchell join that crew? It's certainly a possibility as we go through the stretch run of the season right now. Nyheim Hines, speaking of the trade deadline, he goes from Indianapolis to Buffalo. Short week this past week to get him, kind of in line with the Jets or what the Bills wanted to do. It's kind of a short week, so it was tough to do. I think he was punt returning for him. I think he had 1 target. He didn't catch it. He got a 0. This past week in that game. But going forward, knowing that Buffalo has been craving a pass-catching running back, even going back to when they tried to sign J.D. McKissick, and you think about them drafting James Cook in the second round of the NFL draft as well. Going forward, how does a pass-catching back like Nyheim Hines affect what Devin Singletary has been doing for fantasy owners in Buffalo so far this season?
Yeah, I mean, I like Singletary. I don't understand why they don't use him more. Like, I watch a lot of his runs, and it just looks like there's more there. I just don't know if it's, he's kind of on the smaller side, or just like they know that if they use him more that, he'll break down possibly. I'm not sure if you heard, with the Josh Allen news and some of the Buffalo, the way the Buffalo situation is going. If Allen would have missed any time, I would think Hines would be pretty good, just because, Keenum really not trusting himself and kind of checking down and things like that. So, that's one of those things, I think, depending on how it goes, I think the problem with that is probably some of their game scripts. They're not, they're leading big in most of those games, right? It's like, doesn't really lead to his skill set, a lot. But definitely a great player, But like I said, I do like Singletary, but I just don't understand why they don't use him more. I see some of the games and they'll, have 50 yards in the first quarter and then he ends up with like 62.
It seemed like for the last several years, Buffalo's been trying to find somebody to replace Singletary. You can look back to Zach Moss. You can look to the acquisition of Hines, the attempted acquisition of McKissick, and obviously the addition of Cook now. And they always seem to be trying to improve there. Yet Singletary keeps fighting off all fenders there, and a guy who still is the 1A on that offense. And will he be a capital capital 01? We'll find out down the stretch here as Hines gets more acclimated into that role. But I think you've raised some good points about why it might be fool's gold with Nyheim Hines to expect him to become this guy who's going to get 10 targets every week in that offense.
What do you think about their offense? What do you think about Davis?
Well, here's the thing. So just I'll talk about Davis in a second, but the thing is with Buffalo, it strikes me they're a very weird team, right? When it comes to how good they are and how they do it. They don't seem to run the ball even when they're winning for whatever reason. They continue to pass the ball, and obviously Allen and Diggs and Davis and Knox contribute to that. And number two, it seems like they don't give up a whole lot of passing yards when they probably should, right? Because they are winning all these games late.
True.
They should be giving up more passing yards, and they really don't do it. Now, Micah Hyde went down a few weeks ago. Their stud safety. I'm sure that and Jordan Poyer's been hurt there on that offense too, or on that defense as well, which is going to contribute. You saw what the Packers did in the second half of that Sunday night game. Rodgers was able to cut them up a little bit more once they were down with those defensive backs. So it's weird. You normally see teams like that. They get out to big leagues. The big leads. They run the football. They give up some passing yards. Buffalo doesn't really do either one of those things, which is weird. Now with Gabe Davis, it's weird because at the start of the season, during drafting season, I think everybody just wanted a piece of that Buffalo offense. And that included Gabe Davis, and that included Dawson Knox. Isaiah McKenzie was a real popular pick too. And Davis is going to have these big games. But as we have seen throughout the season, I remember towards the end of drafting season, the start of the season, people were talking about Gabe Davis maybe being the number one on this team and Diggs playing, number two. Going back to what Davis did in that AFC game against Kansas City in the playoffs last year. We got the 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. Thought that was a little bit overblown. I think Gabe Davis is super talented, but to me, it's clear at this point that Allen and Diggs have a special connection. Davis can be good, but the big games for him are few. I benched him in a league last week, Stephen. I benched him in a league where I played 4 receivers in front of him just because I was concerned about the volume. And I think if you're going to roll with him, you feel all right about it going forward. But you got to understand he's going to have these 2 for 34 or 3 for 28 weeks. I think that's just going to happen with how he is on this offense.
Yeah, it looks like he's been a little injury prone too, kind of over the short, like not majorly, but it just seems like he's dealing with things.
And he plays through it, which is good and bad because it's good. You can still start him, but it's also bad because, if he's not up to his peak performance and peak athletic ability, that's going to hurt him a little bit. And then you have to weigh that in when you're submitting lineups on Sunday mornings, which, by the way, PR announcement, Munich, Germany, Seahawks, Buccaneers, 9:30 Eastern time. Get those lineups set, everybody, early or late on Saturday night. Make sure you don't miss out on that.
I hate those. I like watching the games, but I don't like setting the lineups.
That's how I am. I Thursdays I set my lineups, with the guys that are playing on Thursday, and then I'll get up early Sunday or right before I go to bed Saturday. I'll set the Sunday morning games, but then I do the process all over again before the 1 p.m. games. Trying to get all my ducks in a row. But yeah, you're right. You get to watch 4 football games on Sunday, but setting those lineups Sunday morning, it's not great. Continuing with the NFL trade deadline, Jeff Wilson, who went from San Francisco to Miami, actually outsnapped Raheem Mostert. I don't think he outplayed him. I think statistically Mostert had the better performance, but Wilson was out there for more snaps. When you look at the Miami Dolphins now and Jeff Wilson's role on that team, is he a flexible guy going forward, given how often he was out on the field, or is Mostert still the guy for you there?
Yeah, I guess I'd say I kind of like both of them equally. I'm a big Jeff Wilson fan. I just think he's always been a good runner. He's always it just seems like he gets going for 4 games and he's running to the end zone. He, rips his calf apart. You know what I mean? Just always seems to be something with him. But geez, when he's out on the field, I think he's like one of the top like 15 backs, 20 backs, in the league. But Mostert, as long as he's staying healthy, I mean, he's just, he can, just, bust a run any minute, So I like both of them, really, honestly. Yeah, I'd like to have both of them, but you can't have that, So yeah, I definitely like him moving forward, just in that offense. And then, I think kind of later in the season, like some folks have mentioned, once the weather gets a little colder, right? It's some of the game plans can change a little bit. So yeah, definitely like him, and like I said, always have and always have liked the skill set.
It's like the 49ers East now with Mike McDaniel, Jeff Wilson, and Raheem Mostert all there. Could be a good thing for Mostert too, because if Wilson is getting out there consistently, that's going to keep Mostert healthy longer, right? Because he's not going to have to touch the ball 20, 25 times a game. And, a guy like him, if he's touching it 12 to 15, that might be enough to be a flex-worthy guy in that Miami offense with how good they're humming right now. On the flip side of that, Denver's offense not humming along right now. They add Chase Edmonds from the Miami Dolphins, the Broncos do. And now you have Edmonds. They already added Latavius Murray a few weeks back off the New Orleans practice squad. And, of course, Melvin Gordon. This is all in the wake of the Javonte Williams ACL tear. You look at that backfield right now, Stephen. Are any of these guys startable or even rosterable now going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think some games Gordon could be okay, but it's just like you're just guessing, I think, with
Right.
that. But, later in the year, if there's some attrition, right, that could work out. Never been an Edmonds guy. I just don't get why people draft him so high. Never have, never will really, unless it's like a perfect situation if he goes to a team like the Chiefs or something.
Mm-hmm.
But it's kind of crazy. I mean, I'm not a Murray fan, but he seems to produce when he's out there. You give him the ball on the 10-yard line. Some of these backs, they can't get in the end zone. You give him the ball 5 and 6 times, and they're lucky if they get the ball in the end zone. He just seems like he's got a nose for the end zone. So a lot of times, you're struggling to find roster spots. That's a good play, really, sometimes to me. Not the number 1 play or second or third play, right? But if it's like your last flex and you're in a jam or something, I think sometimes that can work out, right?
So for you, Murray and Gordon, yes, on your roster. Edmonds for you, probably not.
No, and I could just be the wrong person to be talking to about it, but I just never have seen the allure with him. I mean, I know he had some of those years with all the catches and stuff, and I think he's like 5'6" or something. He's like, it's just I don't know. Some of these backs, I don't know how they survive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we saw we saw the report from Tony Pollard this past week, where he was essentially the full-time guy for Dallas. And he said after 30 snaps, his body, that was it for him. He felt exhausted. You think about all these people, and I'm not saying they're wrong, but a lot of high-stakes players, again, for the last 2 or 3 years have been saying, free Ezekiel or free Tony Pollard. Elliott is the much worse back. And now you see what happens when Pollard is the full-time guy. He is not the long-term solution as the 1A running back there. I think he needs Ezekiel Elliott to be at his best. You look at what he's been able to do against non-8-man boxes over the last 2 or 3 years when he's running outside the tackles. He's been even inside the tackles. Then he's been crushing it. But when you overload him, that's when you run into problems.
Yeah, and I think I'm guilty of that sometimes too. Just saying just give him the ball more. But like you said, you don't understand the damage they go through in the trenches there, I guess, right? So.
I think I might have heard this on another. I think Sigmund Bloom might have been talking about this on one of his podcasts, and I think I read it somewhere too that every game for a running back, for like a bell cow running back, it's like going through 5 or 6 car accidents. It's like the same equivalent on your body as going through 5 or 6 car, and they're doing this every Sunday in a 3-hour span. It's just crazy to me.
Wow.
And then people wonder why the end value is running back, because they're putting him through such hell.
Right.
Let's talk about Cade Otton here, because I think it was interesting to see what he did so in week 8, he gets 5. Okay, let's go back to week 7 at Carolina. He gets 5 targets. He catches 4 of them for 64 yards. Week 8, 5 targets again. He only catches 2 of them for 15 yards. But then this past week, 6 targets, 5 catches, 68 yards, and his first ever NFL touchdown. Stephen, I was talking to people in August this past year, some pretty good high stakes players like yourself, that said when Gronkowski retired, they were actually looking at Otten as the main guy in this offense at tight end, as opposed to Cameron Brate, who the Buccaneers gave a lot of money to, right, this offseason. Yep. And now it's taken all the way to week 7 for him to get going. But Otten looks like an interesting guy. Now, again, the German game against the Seattle Seahawks on Sunday morning. This seems like another pretty good matchup. Does he keep it going? Is this a guy that you should be flexing out in tight end premium leagues this week?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think it's, Brady, it can be, seeing him over the years here so closely, it almost infuriates you because he's got a certain talent on the field and he won't throw to them. And then he'll make one pass to them that's, at their feet, and he'll drop it and then doesn't see another target for 2 weeks, right? So I think once that player gets going with him, I think it does take off like that. So, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And no, I think you're making a good point. And remember, this was, you look at that final drive against the Rams, and this is from memory, so I might be getting this wrong, but I feel like Otten was the guy on that. It wasn't Evans, it wasn't Godwin, it wasn't Fournette. Like Otten was the guy he was going to, which is really interesting when you consider, not that I'm comparing Otten to Gronk or Hernandez, but Brady has focused on the tight end position a lot in his offenses, and maybe Otten, maybe there's something here. Think about in FFPC leagues, you could have missed on tight end totally. And at a certain point this year, not only gotten Cade Otton off the waiver wire, but Greg Dulcich in Denver as well, who looks like he's really coming on, which is going to be very compelling going forward. Sure. Indianapolis Colts, I don't know what's going on there. They just announced their play caller today. I think it was Parks Frazier is going to be calling plays. The Colts, after Jeff Saturday was named the interim coach there, they have 0 coaches on their roster that have any play calling experience in the NFL. Now Frazier is going to be calling them going forward. This is a team that essentially has fired their starting quarterback 3 weeks ago, and Matt Ryan. 2 weeks ago, they fired their offensive coordinator. This past week, they fired their head coach. So Jim Irsay is just, he says, I believe in our quarterback going forward. And then, I know he gets hurt, but essentially he was benched. Believe in our play calling, OC gets fired. I believe in Frank Reich. Frank Reich's going to be around here. No, he's not. He was fired. So I don't really know what to expect from them. You have an interim head coach in Jeff Saturday. I don't know what Parks Frazier is going to do as the offensive, passing coordinator and quarterbacks coach on this team. In regards to what you can expect in Week 10, what are we thinking here, Stephen? Well, who do you start? Do you sit anybody from Indianapolis? Are you breaking ties against Colts this week, knowing that there is an unknown with their players?
Yeah, I think I'm a huge Jeff Saturday fan. I've always been a Colts fan, so I hope he does great. I just, I think he'll probably do a little bit better than what people think, but just, from the sounds of it, he's got to come in, get his own staff, kind of get everybody up to speed and kind of work with, all kinds of new people, and then, kind of get going and, supposed to hit the ground running. So that, from a football standpoint, that probably won't happen, but man, I think with a lot of those Colts players, I find it hard that you could bench them with all these bye weeks. Yeah. I mean, could you bench a Pittman or if you have Campbell or Pierce or something? Yeah, probably the last 2 you could probably bench if you have someone that that you think is in a better situation. But I don't really see how if Taylor even started or Pittman that you could even bench those guys. Even with Ellinger throwing the ball, but maybe with Ellinger throwing the ball, I don't know how hurt Ryan is either, but man, I'd love to see Ryan back there. I just don't understand why. I mean, I guess from a winning standpoint, he's probably better for that, but from a fantasy standpoint, he's just seems so much better,
What are you, a Paris Campbell or an Alec Pierce guy? Which way do you fall in on this for fantasy the remainder of the season?
Yeah, I like both. I've always been a Paris Campbell fan. Just not sure his game sort of fits the league really, just with, kind of how they're playing a lot of these coverages this year and such. I think he could become like a possession receiver over time. But, he's it's a great story, kind of what he's been through. And I'd love to see him do well. But again, I love the Colts. I just, you're saying I have a hard time finding the right spots to take them, like for different reasons. And, it seems like the line was supposed to be really good. And it seemed like right from the beginning of the preseason, it was all screwed up kind of, that's, from what I recall. I think there could be something there though, like over the long haul of the season. That would be just a guess, but.
We'll learn more obviously this week when we get a game of information when the Colts take on the Las Vegas Raiders in Sin City this week. Raiders opening up at 3.5-point favorites after all the tumult that has gone on in Indiana this week. Raiders are now up to 6-point favorites in that game, so that's going to be very interesting to see how that goes. Another guy that we're looking to get more information on and see him in action more. We saw him a little bit this past Sunday when the Chiefs took on the Titans. They go to overtime. Kadarius Toney, he only gets 2 targets, but he caught both of them for 12 yards. I think that's more catches than he had all this season with the New York Giants. And he's already and the Chiefs gave up some decent draft capital to get him. This is a wide receiver core that seemed like Juju Smith-Schuster was coming on, but Sky Moore had gotten next to nothing. Marquez Valdes-Scantling has been next to nothing aside from maybe one good game. And obviously Mecole Hardman, still Mecole Hardman, a boomer bust type guy. But looking at this week now in Jacksonville, he gets the full week of practice. Kadarius Toney, we don't have the 6 teams on bye, but you still have 4 teams on bye this week. Are you more likely to start Toney on more of your rosters this week, Stephen, or bench him still?
Yeah, he something doesn't seem right with that guy. That's just me. Just a combination of like off the field, everything. Obviously he's electric. I think he's on the best team he possibly could be on, like as far as, there's probably 1 or 2 other teams I think that, he'd be perfect for, but he's got the best chance possible to succeed. I think he'll probably need an injury there, which will probably happen. So I think he's a good guy to have on your roster. I'm just not sure that's the guy I would, like run to start. But if I saw him on my bench and I didn't have anything else left, I'd be like, okay, I'll play him, but definitely has a skill set. I just don't know, like in the long run, how he's going to turn out, Yeah. But it's like a lot of these, kind of gadgety players, if they get with the right coach and the right system, it could be perfect. Right. But that's, you're trying to like, kind of fit that piece into the puzzle. Right. So it's got a lot has to go right,
So if Toney does come on in Kansas City, you think that's still a few weeks away, and in the meantime, it doesn't really hurt a guy like Juju Smith-Schuster who is really coming on.
Yeah, I don't think so. I mean, Juju, it seems like he's kind of had some of these head injuries, and I worry about him anytime he kind of goes over the middle, right? Just for whatever reason, but he looks like he's kind of rejuvenated there and healthy and everything, So, yeah, they definitely could use, kind of like a different weapon to kind of get those guys open sort of across the middle, right? So
might be good for Travis Kelce too. If Smith-Schuster and Toney are taking care of the perimeter on the outside and getting downfield, that should free up stuff for Kelce over the middle. Not that you need another reason to start that guy. He's been awesome once again this year. Final question here for you, Stephen, on this Tuesday night. One sleeper player. I don't know how much you've looked at Week 10 lineups already, but one sleeper player that not a lot of FFPC players probably will start, but you think probably should get in their lineups. And then a guy that people, maybe it's just an automatic start and you don't feel great about it, but you're still starting him. But a guy that you think people are going to be disappointed with if they do start him in Week 10.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking I was thinking kind of that you actually mentioned one of them. Otten might be one of them. And that's kind of like a long shot type of thing. And then I think Josh Palmer, I think those other 2 receivers are going to be a wreck the whole year. So even if both of them come back, I would still kind of like that. I think he's going to be unbelievable, that guy. I think he's got it all. Yeah, I think, I like him this week. And then for one that I came prepared this time because you've asked me this before and I'm not.
Right.
And one that I didn't really like too much was Fournette, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's somebody I think nobody would bench, right? But just not I don't know if there's something wrong or just, the line or something, but he just looks completely out of it, really. He's had a couple good games. The thing is, he still even puts up good points, even when he has like some of these bad games.
Yeah. Well, because all the catches, right?
Exactly.
That can save you. Now, I'll bring this up as long as you're bringing Leonard Fournette up. Greg Allman covers the Buccaneers for The Athletic said that, and I'm going to quote him here. He says the momentum will likely be with Rachaad White by the end of the season in the Tampa backfield. And Allman says that even though Fournette was getting the snaps, not only this past week, but in previous weeks, if he doesn't get it going, then we could see, Rachaad White season, as the kids say, going forward. And so this is just sort of a forewarning to anybody out there. I know we have one more 6-team bye week coming up, but a forewarning out there. If you can find a way to keep Rachaad White on your roster, do it, because this guy, if you're talented enough to get your team to the championship round, like Stephen Ranaghan is, maybe Rachaad White is a guy that you could be looking at as a potential league winner in those final few weeks.
Yep.
I think that if you are ever wanting to do better in your fantasy football leagues, talking to the original league winner, Stephen Ranaghan, is always a good decision. So hopefully everybody tuning in tonight enjoyed listening and us being able to pick your brain. I know I enjoyed it, Stephen, as I always do, talking shop with you. Congratulations on getting all the way to third place in the Footballguys Players Championship. I know when it comes to national tournaments, the top 10, you are no stranger to. You've done very, very well for yourself. Not only coming close to the mountaintop, but finishing the season on the mountaintop. I know you're still looking for another big one. You cash in on the playoff contest. Maybe this is your year in the Footballguys Players Championship. I wish you nothing but the best of luck the rest of the way. Thank you. We'll do this again soon, man. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It means a lot, man. Honestly, it's fun to come on and talk to you. I wish the best for FFPC. Hope you guys are doing good. Looks like you're doing great. I know you guys sold out pretty quickly. Awesome site, great contest. So really appreciate it. I hope your Packers, and I'm not giving you a dig here. I hope they get better. I think they may sneak in there, hopefully, but
we'll see.
They got to get going.
Yeah, they do. They do. And when you only score 9 points against the historically bad defense, Stephen, I'm not holding my breath for this team to turn it around when Mike McCarthy comes back to town with his Cowboys Sunday afternoon. I'll be at the game at Lambeau Field. Hopefully I bring home a win, but I don't know, man, at this point. I don't know what to expect. So good to talk to you, dude. Be good. Good luck in week 9.
Good. You
week
too.
10, beg your pardon. All right,
yeah.
You bet. Stephen Ranaghan, ladies and gentlemen, the third place team owner in the Footballguys Players Championship. As we head into week 10, great to talk with him. And anytime we're lucky enough to pick his brain, I think we're all better fantasy football players because of it. So I do want to thank him for coming on. I want to remind everybody to play the FFPC Weekly Challenge. No draft or salary cap. You can play in the slim format without kickers and defenses and form your best 10 players. You can play with kickers and defenses, form your best lineup with 12 players. Just get them in by Sunday's kickoff, and then you will be able to watch them ride throughout the rest of the weekend. Can play and win $2,500 or a 2023 FFPC Main Event team. All you got to do is beat out 9 other players, and you get a free main event entry. You cannot beat that. You can play for $200 or for $35 for an entry fee in a 30-team contest, a 10-team contest, a 100-team contest. That's all at myffpc.com. I want to thank Stephen Ranaghan. As you may or may not know, I do a show on the Better Sports Network from 10 to midnight Eastern time on Wednesday nights. I'll be doing that again tomorrow. You can check that out on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. But I strongly encourage you to download the Better Sports Network app from Google Play and the App Store so you can get in on all the great contests and giveaways we have going on there. You can reach out and join the video stream yourself when you have the app. You can also call into the show with one push of a button. That's always been fun when we get those players or those, fantasy football enthusiasts to come on and can ask our questions with myself and a rotating guest. Tomorrow's guest is Josh Hayes from RotoBaller. You hear him on SiriusXM, RotoBaller Radio, and you check out all his work at rotoballer.com. He will chop it up with me from 10 until midnight tomorrow night. Friday, we return live with the High Stakes Fantasy Football Hour. Myself and Farrell Elliott along with the 15th place team in the FFPC main event, chasing a $1 million grand prize. John Donadio will be our guest there. Don't miss that, 10-9 Central. Thank you so much for watching, everybody, streaming, downloading, wherever you're getting this. Good luck in week 10, and we will do this again. We'll see you here at 10-9 Central on Friday night. Otherwise, RotoViz High-Stakes Lowdown will be back at 10-9 Central this coming Tuesday. Thanks for watching, everybody.
Thank you for listening to the High Stakes Lowdown, a RotoViz podcast brought to you by the Fantasy Football Players Championship. And thanks to Grapes for our theme music. Please review the podcast on iTunes under the RotoViz radio feed. It helps us find new listeners. Contact us via email, rotovizradio@gmail.com. We'd love to hear what you think, and follow us on Twitter at RotoVizRadio. And remember, you can always support the show by subscribing to RotoViz at a 10% discount through the NFL podcast homepage, rotoviz.com/podcast.